Now, if it were up to the so-called journalists, there are none in the mainstream media, none of this would ever get reported. Biden would never be fully vetted, just like in 2008 with Barack Obama. Remember, this show investigated Obama's ties to, unrepentant domestic terrorists, Bernardine Dohrn, Bill Ayers. It was us on this show that were digging into his deep personal connection to Reverend Wright, the Church of GD America, and black liberation theology that so inspired him, and Acorn and Alinsky and community organizing and even the Choom Gang and so much more. And remember, throughout his presidency, it was really up to us to cover his scandal-plagued administration because, well, journalism's dead and it's been buried quite a while, unfortunately. And most of the members of the media are nothing more than shills and an extension of the Democratic Party. They don't care about you, we, the people. Things have improved so much under Donald Trump, and they hate him. Why wouldn't they be championing success for the American people first? Interesting question. Now, this was perfectly exemplified during the president's recent trips to South Korea. Paid very close attention. All right, the president goes to the DMZ. President Trump met quickly after he tweeted out to North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un. Became the first sitting U.S. president to cross the DMZ. President Trump, let's see, he offered no concessions to North Korea. Sanctions are still very much in place. In other words, President Trump did not try to bribe the North Korean regime like Bill Clinton did with your money in the mid-90s and tell us this is a good deal for the American people. Nor did President Trump drop $150 billion in cash and other currency on a tarmac to mullahs in Iran, like Biden and Obama did during their failed Iranian nuclear deal. No, this president won't try to appease, bribe dictators, but he also hates unnecessary wars. President Trump's not an interventionist. He is about America. His policy is clear. America first, the American people first. His foreign policy and diplomacy surrounds economic pressure, open lines of communication. We see that with Iran. Iran is desperate because of the measures and, of course, the sanction the president has put on Iran. He's tapping in now to America's vast oil and natural gas reserves. That means the Straits of Hormuz are less strategically important than ever before. And by the way, you want to see the wealth of the average man and woman in this country rise? Let us be not only energy independent, but let's share our vast resources with the rest of the world, and you'll see the standard of living of every American go through the roof. Why wouldn't the news media want to tell you that? And by the way, the president views military action as a last result. The only thing he has offered to Kim Jong-un, Iran, and Putin, whoops, dropped my pen, is his time, his attention. He has offered nothing more. And that's not what gets reported. Members of the media can't see through their rage, their psychosis, to truly understand this president. So naturally, the mainstream media, they were outraged. If the president cured cancer, they'd be outraged. All because the president had the audacity to simply hold a meeting. Remember, he got hostages back, he got remains back, and he even got the rockets from not being fired every other day. He's given nothing but time. That's it. Nothing else. Unlike Clinton, Biden, and Obama. Take a look.
Elise, what do you think?
It makes me want to puke. Just my visceral reaction as an American who cares about democracy and human rights. The fact that Donald Trump is going out of his way to kiss up just to this monster.
And he said something else that I wish we wouldn't let go by, which is it's an honor to be here with you. You know what? It is not an honor to be there with a brutal, murderous dictator.
The United States president meeting with the leader of North Korea was regarded as a plum prize that no administration had granted. The president gave that away. The United States president visiting North Korea was regarded as a great prize. That was given away for pretty much nothing.
This was the dramatic headline, the dramatic photo that President Trump wanted. He's a great showman. He pulled it off today. There's just no question about that.
It's hard to anticipate anything more than this being a photo op that leads to more talks that may not lead to anything.
Oh, it might not lead to anything, but maybe it might lead to something, like more remains being sent back, more hostages freed. Who knows where it'll lead? That was just one of many media meltdowns in recent days. There's nothing this president can do that will satisfy them. Another surrounded the president's brief meeting with Vladimir Putin at the G20 summit, which I thought was hilarious. Press didn't think he was strong enough on his warning against Russian election interference. They said to him, "Are you going to tell him to stop meddling in our elections?" Here's what the president said.
I think Putin, for his part,
feels as though that attitude, the cavalier attitude about the Russian threat to our fundamental system, gives him license to continue to do what he's been doing, and we can count on it for the election in 2020.
This is the undercurrent of this entire trip. Meeting with authoritarian figures, basically winking a nod to Putin, winking a nod to MBS.
It's also the undercurrent of his entire presidency. He likes strong men.
Watching it, I'm appalled.
Did the president just basically invite Putin to interfere in 2020?
The president doesn't realize that when he does that, it sends a terrible message to the world that the United States is weak and that the president is weak.
What did they want? Did they want the president to get into a duel with Vladimir Putin, go MMA right there in front of them? Did they want him to start a public brawl at the G20? Did they honestly think the president could say something in front of the press at a press conference that would stop the hostile actions of Russia? Well, no. In reality, the media just wants to blame the president for everything. No president's been tougher in modern day on Russia in recent years than Donald Trump. Same with Iran. Nobody's been tougher with Iran. And the sanctions still remain in North Korea. Look at the reaction of the president's 4th of July salute to America. And by the way, the hysteria, the phony moral outrage, it was a patriotic parade that celebrated the military, the same military that defeated communism, fascism, Nazism, and Imperial Japan. But they were criticizing him even before the event took place. They knew what was going to happen. But they were wrong. Watch the predictions.
What is the message Donald Trump is trying to send by rolling tanks down Constitution Avenue? Who is that message to? Is it to the resistance in this country? I got tanks. I have this military armada. The message is a threat. But it's always a threat when you roll out your military. But it's to whom is the threat? And I suspect that the threat is to his fellow Americans.
I'm just personally outraged about the president hijacking the 4th of July.
Just think about the juxtaposition of those images of those children in cages. And here is Donald Trump, and there are these, things flying overhead and the tanks. Is that really the message we want to send about America?
This is not what we normally think as a democratic display of our values, but rather the values of power, of might making right, of dictatorships.
This is not just obnoxious tackiness. This is actually dangerous because it's fundamentally un-American.
Okay, the same freedoms that are protected every day. The president gave a nonpartisan patriotic speech with a great history. They even made fun of that. It honored our country. It highlighted the brave men and women who served this country in uniform to protect our liberties and freedoms. But the media painted a much more sinister picture, predictably, from the 4th of July celebration, the brief meeting with Kim Jong-un, the presser with Vladimir Putin. The press in this country is so corrupt, they will use any and everything to smear this president. That's who they now are. They use the same tactic with, just the Jeffrey Epstein case. You know, the well-connected, uber-wealthy financier recently indicted on sex trafficking charges. Now, Epstein once had ties to many politicians and celebrities, including big ties to that guy, Bill Clinton, who took very many trips on Epstein's private plane. We called it, or the New York Post dubbed it, the Lolita Express. Now, Clinton denied any wrongdoing, but we covered the story extensively well before the 2016 election. The rest of the media, as usual, didn't ask any questions. They wanted to help Hillary at all costs. And only now the mainstream media is interested because Epstein once had ties to President Trump through social events at Mar-a-Lago. Now, what the media is not telling you tonight is that Trump severed all ties with Epstein, look at the court documents, and banned him from Mar-a-Lago years ago. Trump was reportedly cooperative in the 2008 case against Epstein. Now the media will use the sick, disgusting crimes of this guy to attack the president. In other words, the guy that's really good friends with Bill Clinton. It's beyond shameful, wrong, selective moral outrage. The American people know better. President's approval ratings, by the way, have reached their highest point yet, and for good reason. Look at the economy's booming. And nobody predicted the jobs creation in the month of June alone. 224,000 new jobs were added, bringing the unemployment down to a historic 3.7%. Doesn't matter what the media says, the Trump agenda is working. Record low, the best employment situation since 1969, Record low unemployment for African Americans, Hispanic Americans, Asian Americans, women in the workplace, and youth unemployment.